Hello, this is Hope Rosky, subbing in for Mike Briggs with Briggs on Books. Well, today we have a special guest coming in to us, and her name is Julienne Ryan. Julienne, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm always happy to meet somebody that Mike knows, and I'm always happy to talk about books and work and life. So I'm excited to meet you.
Well, I tell you what, I'm thrilled because I had an opportunity to read up about you and indulge a little bit in the summary of your books. And so I'm really ready to get into this interview we
Ah,
have here. And the first book I'd really like to talk to you about is Learned in Queen's Communication Playbook, Winning Against Digital Distraction. Now, that is a pretty big name. So if I'm breaking it down where you part, you learned it in Queens, right? Okay, can't
yes.
do the accent, but you learned it in Queens. So if you learned it in Queens, what did you learn, and then how did that really become a part of your book?
Thank you. It started as a complaint, and that was my Learned in Queens was a call to action to say to common sense. I worked in human resource, I worked in business, I ran a school as well, and most of our challenges are about people not listening to each other, not paying attention, and not remembering what we said. So that was my response when somebody was saying that's really smart. Well, I learned it in Queens. It's all common sense. So and then and then there's a part two to that question.
So the other part is, winning against digital distraction. Okay, so that's a big part. When we talk about the digital age and digital distraction. Tell me, where do you see our society in that, and how do you work with people? Because I know you also do coaching. How do you work with people in making things better?
I work with people to pay attention and pick their head up off these phones. They're brilliant, they're helpful, they make our lives easier, but a lot of times we get so used to having an internal dialogue with ourselves because we're writing our own scripts. We're assuming we know how that person is thinking and feeling. The first thing I always encourage people is to step back and pay attention to their assumptions, because usually what we're assuming is happening in that answer or in the room that we're heading into, that conference room, is not correct. We've written the whole dialogue, we pretend that we know everything that's going on, and usually we're wrong. So I work with people to test their assumptions, test their stories, and why they're writing the scripts for themselves, and help them get out of their own way. But I use some humor because a little humor is disruptive, and what happens when we use humor? We get to laugh, we get to relax, and then we get to have feedback,
Well, and
which is the
it's
most important
interesting.
thing,
No, and
and
it's
take some
interesting you
action.
say that. Yes. Well, I have a cousin who does laughter yoga. He actually teaches
Ah,
it. And so the other, part of it too is laughter is good medicine because it's releasing all these little happy serotonin, endorphins all over, you, and it's a way of becoming very uplifted with humor. And so it's you found a way to meld all of this in your book. Now, when was it that you actually published this book?
I published the book during COVID, which was a lot of people's very busy creative period. So when I was locked away, I had the draft of the book, which had started its life as a speech like a year or so before. And I was like, well, if I don't use this opportunity to sit down and write it, when am I going to write it? So I wrote the book, and then I did the smartest thing you can do with any creative project, or whether it's at work or at home or wherever. I got guidance and asked some very smart people, a friend of mine who is an editor, to take a look at it. And then I had a couple of writing groups. But at the essence, it was we all need to get out of our own way. And that was the essence of what the original speech was. We make assumptions, we think we know the best, and we're usually wrong. So the book was basically poking some fun at all of us to say, you and me, we're in the same boat. We need to listen, we need to pay attention, and develop the power of the pause. Ask a question, wait for answers, and develop a little patience. And then the most amazing advice I give, which
And
I have to take sometimes we're wrong. And we have to own up to that part. but
Right.
I make it fun. I make it fun to be in trouble. And, so we can leave, and move forward. It's all this work. I would love to tell you, I cooked this up in a science lab. I didn't. I did it. I started a lot of this thinking when I was in human resources or running big groups of teams as a management, and found
Right.
out I spent more time trying to sort out the dialogue of what was going on with people and their people dynamics. And humans will make us crazy, but if we take a stab at actually taking a pause and figuring out what are we contributing to the situation and how we can get out of our own way, amazing things happen.
And
So
even with couples, it's the same thing.
oh
You
yeah.
talk about the dynamic of couples. One of the things that I really like that you created was a workbook. And, I think with businesses or schools or where people in lines of work and even in couples where you kind of need to, like you say, step back and get out of your own way. Tell me a little bit about the workbook.
Well, the workbook and the book is partly inspired by my husband as you speak about marriage, because he never met a sentence he could make longer, and he's not really great at listening. He's a good guy, love him, been with him forever, but he is my test academy. So the workbook came out of the fact that first I wanted to be on more platforms around the world, English speaking platforms, and then in all the big booksellers too. Amazon's great, but Barnes and Nobles and all that stuff. So that was a practical answer, because there's so many English speaking platforms. But I also know the workbook was meant to say, look, I want to also have a conversation with the reader after they read the humorous part of the book. And they're going, well, now what? This part breaks it down step by steps and has a running conversation with people about working on the exercises, the 8 rules, but I do it in a very humorous way. Like when somebody wants to turn the page, I'm actually giving out to them and saying, what do you mean you're not done with that exercise? You need to work on that page a little more. Go back. So I'm assuming I know what all of you are going to do, like all of us, like page through and speed through the exercises.
Well,
The goal is
and the
to just
thing
learn.
is
Oh,
too, is
sorry.
you have quite a background. Where have you led some of your conferences? Because it's quite impressive where you've been able to speak.
Where or how?
Where have you had the opportunity? Because you have had the opportunity to work with larger groups and businesses, and if people are looking to reach out to you to bring you in, what are maybe you could just describe some of the conferences that you've done or where you've had an opportunity to speak.
I have done conferences with women leadership groups where they're looking to empower and work with their skill sets and lead their teams when they go back to their office. I worked with supply chain and manufacturing people. I've worked with consulting houses. And then more recently, I even worked with an AI conference, artificial intelligence. I am not an artificial intelligence expert, although I did read so much about it. But my goal there was to be the keynote and kick off person, talking about the human dynamic never leaves us, no matter where we're working with technology or not. So I was the humor speaker who played with the whole concept about AI. One example I had there was I turned AI into a little bit of a gangster, because we always sometimes feel like AI is going to fix all of our communication problems. So my joke in one of the slides was like, you got data you want to do something with, you need to get rid of it, you don't know what to talk about, come to me, I can help you. But I look for the irony and the humor that may be happening in that situation. But why my speeches work really well is there's thought behind it. There's a lot of research about what a tool or technique is being used, but also to disrupt our thinking. How can we be better? How do we need to get out of our own way? And no matter what we're using, humans still have to interact, and we still have to learn those skills of listening and connection with each other.
Well, I'm
So
going to
I,
pivot just a little bit here because, we're talking about humanity here. So one of the other books that you've had the opportunity to publish is Echoes of Humanity. And it truly focuses on the human condition. And its base is talking about real life issues such as people who have disabilities, people who have dealt with domestic violence or are dealing with ADHD, weight loss, so many things, and more, people are falling into, sadly, depression, and there's just a plethora of things, especially in today's world. And after reading this book, what do you think readers will take away from this who may be facing some of those challenges, not just within themselves, but maybe those that they love?
The second book, which I was a contributor to, and I can tell you a little bit how that came to be, we are all connected. Every human, because the women who contributed and the one gentleman, my partner who contributed, are located around the globe, from Africa to Asia to North America. Everyone shares a very similar conditions about where grief is, challenge, loss, resilience, things that we are all navigating. And what I loved about the book when I was invited by the author Kelly Markey to contribute it is the honesty. People taking their pain and playing it forward for somebody's purpose. It made it their purpose that they were going to use some of their life's challenges for somebody else's benefit. So somebody else could be stronger and learn and know that they're not alone out there and would feel supported. When I contributed to the book, I played off a little of the work I was doing with storytelling and the book and the speech, but I also wanted to give some context to say behind every humorous story, there's lots of things that contribute to my experience, and that one of the most powerful things is when we start to appreciate our own story and how we can use it. I think so much anger is out there that folks do not think they're seen, heard, or appreciated and respected. When we start to do that and just embrace our situation, it frees us up to listen to other people and to get context. So the book, The Echoes of Healing, was a beautiful exercise in building human connection and realizing we're all related, and that we can help each other, in the process and get through things. So thank you for mentioning that book as well.
Right, and what an honor to be able to have contributed to that book. So, Julienne, I would like to thank you so much for being on the show. Again, your two books, one is Learned It in Queens, Communication Playbook, Winning Against Digital Distraction, and the other one you contributed to is called Echoes of Humanity. How can viewers reach you, or if they want to reach out to you or purchase a book?
Well, I have my website, first and foremost, jryanpartners.com, easy to find, and then all the landing pages for the book are there. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so Julienne Ryan, you can find me. I'm on a podcast. I'm always contributing. I write. So that's one place. And then if you Google me, which I do on some occasions, see what I'm doing to remind me what I've been doing, you can find me there. I love talking and meeting with groups. I love working with teams together, because I think when we empower each other with our stories, we are capable about doing so many good things. So, strong believer in that. And I appreciate folks like you who are championing other people's stories in books. I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. You are a talented lady. And Julienne Ryan, I thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to hopefully interviewing you again sometime in the near future.
Thank you. Be in touch.
You bet.
I look forward to that. All right. Cheers. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too. This is Hope Rosky with Briggs on Books.